without further ado, let's get going. So DevOps as a movement has definitely captured the market and captured the attention of everyone. I'm sure everyone who's here knows about that, right? We're in the mainstream. We're taking up somewhere between early majority and late majority, definitely across the chasm. We have a critical mass. But there's a problem associated with that, right? When we have something that's turning into a buzzword of the day, everyone jumps onto the bandwagon. And the common approach, unfortunately, for anybody who jumps on the bandwagon is that we pick the easiest thing, right? And then for the DevOps, it's usually the tools. And it's partially because it is a core aspect, right? Automation is definitely a core aspect of DevOps. So it's very, very easy to start on that way. Nothing wrong with that. However, sometimes when we try to strap on rocket engines right on top of a wagon that's not really suitable for that distance to travel, what we end up is not faster rate of travel from point A to point B. What you get is actually a broken wagon, right? It's going to get totaled, and maybe because the wheels are not exactly round, or maybe the road it's traveling is not meant for such a high speed, right? Or maybe that there's actually a big boulder in the road that we just did not expect. We expect smooth sailing or flying over that boulder. So what we're going to talk about today is look at some of the common challenges, potential causes, and what can we do to help as a leader, right? Whether you're a leader in leading the transformation itself, or just leader in the organization as general, that champions it, right, in support of it. I hope there's something that you can take away from it. First of all, most often what I see is we spend a lot of time, people, resources, but get very little return in value. And that value we're talking about is business value, right? So at the end of the day, as an organization, whatever's your purpose, whether it's making that profit or that serving a need, that the investment in the DevOps initiative did not return enough meaningful value. And the cause is, and this is some of the causes, and probably the main one is that DevOps obviously involves a lot of technology, right? So it's usually an IT initiative. So the focus in a non-product or non-engineering firm would be that the IT department is kind of isolated, right? It's isolated from the business, isolated from other functions. So it turns into a cost center. So the focus for the initiative becomes cost, reducing cost, increase efficiency, increase productivity. Another challenge is inadequate funding, and I've heard teams talking about they're being asked to roll out this thing and given little people, right? It's a common mantra talking about doing more with less, which makes sense some of the time after we implement DevOps. Then you can do more with less. You can get more things done with less people spending those weekends and nights, right, fixing those builds and releases. However, the inadequate funding for the investment to start is a reflection commonly because we didn't do enough homework. We did not collect enough data. Did not think it through, and it is just usually a assignment or initiative or a checkbox some leadership has just wanted to tick. Right? So DevOps is hot. We got to have DevOps. Let's do it. And so you're tasked with doing that, right? Because you're in technology, you're in operations. You get it going. So as leader, you're gonna need to reflect on that. Like, what's it? Is it a meaningful investment? What is a meaningful investment to actually get enough return from it? And coupled with that, on the other side, really, is the unrealistic expectations. Sometimes with the amount of investment you make, you have unrealistic expectations. And in addition to insufficient homework, right, it's also very typical of a top-down big bang implementation. Now, I'm not saying top-down support is not necessary. It's absolutely critical. Okay, so I want to emphasize that it's absolutely critical to have, excuse me, appropriate level of support from the top. But we need to do enough work at the middle and at the bottom. And I'll refer back to that a little bit later. Another common challenge that we run into in DevOps transformation is sunken cost and legacy tools. Okay? Because when you started, someone somewhere probably already started something, okay? And they're probably already using some. Right? Investments are made, so financial commitments and emotional commitments are made. And it's really hard to change that, right? So it adds additional complexity because you're possibly going to be asked to integrate rather than replace. Right? Even if you replace, you need to have a transition plan. Right? If you don't, people is going to start pushback. Right? And this pushback may not be just on the tools, because every change, right? Every change is disruptive, and DevOps absolutely is a change. Right? And every change also comes with pushbacks. Right? Think about the laws of the physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So this pushback on the number 5, what I'm talking about really is more on the mindset, on the mentality of it. People, when there's a lack of incentive to change, they prefer status quo. Right? So if they're not involved, they're not, they don't understand where we're going, they have a fear. They have a fear of failure. Well, what's going to happen if I actually jump on that wagon? Right? If I help you do that? And what will happen if I said, okay, I allow you to replace my tool and the tool doesn't work as well, and now I cannot deliver? Right? This fear of failure, is also very important to address. And commonly because you have lack of mandate, strategy, alignment, or buy-in, right? And or communications. Right? All these things are actually very, very critical to have. So what are we going to do about it? We have to look at the forest, right? Instead of just looking at this tree, and we can, all the excitement in the community, in the DevOps community, we know there's a lot of good things going on. We still continue to innovate at a high pace and offering a lot of high choice, better and new choices for us to implement. But we gotta see that there's a forest out there. Right? Everything's interconnected. There are other trees out there, and there are other trees that might even be bigger than ours. I don't know. I mean, it really depends on the circumstances of your own ecosystem, right? So we gotta see the forest, understand it, and I call that the ecosystem because I believe in nature, and there's a lot of patterns in nature that you can borrow, and you can map to how we want to do things. And nature, if you think about nature, it has evolved, right, for millions of years. It's much more advanced than some of our industries, our sectors, and like DevOps, having decades under our belt. So in an ecosystem, we got to remember that everything is interconnected. Sometimes they're indirectly connected, okay, but they will come back. Right? Something that happened today is probably caused by something else that we did yesterday. DevOps is just an element in that complex whole. So having that right mindset in the back of our head will help us make the right decisions. And we live in a complex world, right? And there might be simple problems out there, but this DevOps is definitely not a simple problem. And therefore there's no simple solution to a complex problem. Right? Well, what we need to do is to break down those complex problems into simple problems, and keep in mind that in a complex system, any solution that you put in today could have ripple effects for tomorrow, right? So today's problem may be yesterday's solution. But a small and well-placed changes can have big impact. Okay? You probably heard of the butterfly effect. Right? Little flutter of the wings at one corner of the earth could have caused tsunamis, a hurricane in other side of the world, right? Through a chain reaction of effects in this ecosystem, because everything's connected. So if we can research on what are those small things that can be impactful and can create success and create positive news for us, right, in terms of this change for DevOps, then we're creating a lot of chances for success for us. And nature also favors more evolutionary and organic changes than revolutionary changes. Right? Obviously, revolution does happen, mutation does happen, and typically it's through special circumstances, accumulation of years and years of effects, and as well as the right timing. Right? So you don't typically want to create revolution just for the sake of wanting to create revolution. Right? You have to wait for the right moment, right timing, right place, right people for that to happen. So it's much easier to plan out your strategy around evolutionary and organic changes. Ecosystem also has this attribute, and there's a power of self-healing. Right? You chop down a tree, and those seeds will sow itself usually, and it's actually usually already there in the ground, and those little trees will come up. In fact, so ecosystem tends to have this self-healing power. Now, it's great when what you want to achieve is this equilibrium. Right? An ecosystem has a balance of equilibrium. But it could become a problem when your purpose is to disrupt this equilibrium and to even establish a new equilibrium. Right? So this disruption process needs to go through this J curve. If you heard of Virginia Saturn's change curve, right? This is also called J curve. And you're going to meet resistances, right? Because the ecosystem naturally wants to heal itself or go back to its existing state, right? And then you have to struggle through it. So be very careful of this tendency for the system to do so. So there are three things, three strategies I want to talk about on ecosystem thinking and how it can help us in terms of implementing and proliferate DevOps in your organization. One is whole board thinking. It's basically a way to iteratively figure out which decision is the most important one to make next. Right? So the key words here is iterative. Right? And the basic steps is about starting with integrating latest data into your map of your roadmap. Consider the entire problem space in a first way, and then design a service to support it, and consider all the forces at play before you make that decision, right, at the last responsible moment. The second one is about fit for purpose design. Right? Everything we do needs to have a purpose, needs to serve a purpose. Right? So when we design our implementation strategy, our roadmap, we need to keep that in mind. Right? And the last thing is how we take advantage of the property of organic evolution. Okay, so now let's look at each one in detail in practical terms and give you some examples. First, let's focus on business result. Right? So whatever your strategy is, whatever your initiative is that you want to implement, think about the whole, the end goal. Right? Do it with the end goal in mind. What is the business result that we want to improve? And that way, it's much easier to align with your partners, and you will have partners. You will need to align with your partners, right? To say which, how we can measure this and to get buy-ins and get support. And then collect and integrate those latest metrics on the relevant ones on those business results into your plan. Right? So create a baseline where we are, and then you can have a plan on how we can incrementally improve that. Right? And start with a well-suited value stream. Pick something that's visible, highly visible actually, but yet not necessarily mission critical. Okay, so in some ways it is an experiment. You don't know how that's going to turn out if you're doing the first time or even the second time. And in my experience, every DevOps implementation is actually different. It's like software development as well. There's a lot of creativity and innovation involved. Right. So pick something visible so that it can generate impact, but not mission critical, and such that you'll die from it. And preference will be something that's real customer facing. If you can leverage something that's customer facing, then it's easier to get business support. Understand the forces at play. Who's going to support you? Who has this interest, right? Who may not want to have this happen? Right? We talked about having upper management support. Well, the right level of support is absolutely necessary. And what that right level is, it does depend on the culture and how you how the people recognize that there's actual real support from upper management, right? So, for example, in some places, a town hall talk on this starting initiative may be seen as it's just talk the talk, right? And whereas if you actually the objectives start trickle down to different hierarchies and go down to the manager level, and the manager start talking about it, then people start taking notice. It says, okay, well, this looks like this is something real that's going to stick, right? And also find your allies, right? DevOps is very closely, in many places, closely allied with Agile because it works very well together. Lean as well, Kanban, and even process improvement and quality management. These are all allies in your organizations that you can leverage. And there are places where sometimes it has centralized COE type of organization to proliferate. Sometimes it happens locally. There are pros, cons to either approach, and we don't have time to talk about that here. And but it can work. Like either way can work. But the key things is still think about this whole board thinking, is understand your allies, your partners, and who may be able to stop in your tracks, right? And then lastly is collect enough data, right? So it's not about procrastinating, not making decisions. It's about having enough data. Right? And then one of the key things about that data is know your baseline and know how you're going to measure your progress and how to measure your result. And these results must be meaningful. Ideally, these results should be customer facing. So here's our first takeaway. Think globally, right, in terms of all the strategy, but then act locally in that corner. Okay, so understand the whole board, what your strategy is going to implement it, but now tactically work on your corner.
Okay, Patrick, you have 3 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. And fit for purpose design. So here's an example: is know your customer, and that customer may not be external, right? It could be internal or external, but the customer is not your exec, is not your champion. That's different, right? A champion is a champion, and customer is customer. So keep your customer in mind, because at the end of the day, your champion is only supporting you because of however indirect it is. There's customer at the end of the need. Understand your customer's needs, right? And not understand that it's needs, not just wants, and not have vanity metrics. Okay? Pick your KPIs, your key performance indicator, as customer facing. Okay? Sometimes I also call fitness criteria in the fit for purpose method. You have to think about the ones that customer can feel, can see. Right? These are ones that you want to measure, you want to track. Right? Make it real, and then work hard to meet those fitness criteria. Right? Why the customer? Keep in mind why the customer selected you to go with your DevOps implementation may be different than how you intend to use it. Right? And the former matters more in order for you to succeed. So be flexible. And the takeaway on this one is service the need adequately. Right? No more, no less. This is different than a lot of people were saying delighting the customer and go all the way. But in fit for purpose design is that you want to service the need, you want to satisfy the customer, but not over servicing it, because otherwise you're wasting investment dollars. And lastly, organic design, right? Organic evolution. Think about enabling over transforming. Transforming is a scary word, right? People don't resist change, they resist being changed. Involve them, establishing the goal, right? And then get them participate. And then you have to establish your credibility and reliability. You may not need a full suite of things or 100 choices for every function, but they gotta be of high quality. So establish yourself so that people can trust you, right? When you say, okay, I can help you become better. And beware of your own biases. That's what I mean by self-orientation. It's not necessarily selfishness. Right? Obviously, if they see you as only in it for yourself and not them, that's going to be a bad thing, right? But also check your biases and share your successes, your progress, the results, your problems. That's the way to build trust. When you have trust, you will have a much smoother transformation. Thank you. Masat, I guess it's over to you to say if there's any questions.
I was unmuting, sorry. Okay, so well, so nobody typed any questions so far, but we have a couple more minutes left. If anybody has a question, please type it, and Bill will read it for you.
Okay, so as we wait for those questions, might as well leverage those
Sure.
those minutes, right? And I don't know if you heard of this CAMS model, right? There's one of the DevOps model called CAMS. This is a culture, automation, measurement, and then sharing. Right? In fact, in one of the latest surveys, the sharing out of those 4 pillars of DevOps, sharing is actually the most important one. It actually affects how the other 3 works. And so this is actually a key component that you need to definitely build into your plan. Okay, here's a question. Can you show any metrics considered for fit for purpose with a specific example? So for example, and a metric is for DevOps will be how fast a lead time. Okay, so lead time is a very, very common one, right? And this lead time shows when your customer, assuming that you have a customer-facing service, so count from the time when customer placed that order, placed that demand, till the time that customer receives it. Right? You may even want to extend it if there's other internal processes about billing to extend over that, or extend it all the way till when the customer gives the feedback. However you define the window for lead time, that's very important. This is a critical one, right? And that's something that the customer can feel, right? And because they place the order for you, and if it matters when they take a day to get it, or it takes a week to get it, or it takes 1 hour to get it, or immediately, right? So that's something. This is what I mean by fit for purpose, customer facing KPIs.